Hello, friends. Welcome back. My name is Carly, and this is Owning Authenticity. And in this video, I want to talk about something that I think is relatable to the human condition. So I would love to hear from you down in the comments as we go. If there's anything that you can relate to about this experience, and the experience is of this deep inner void. This inner void that wants things. It wants accomplishments. It wants possessions. It wants relationships. It wants all kinds of things. And when it gets them, like you dream of the thing and then the dream comes true and the thing is actually not even a letdown. There's not even disappointment in the mix here. It's everything you could have dreamed of. And it doesn't fill that void. It doesn't actually close that gap inside of you where the longing and the yearning and the dreaming was originating from. Have you ever had an experience like that? Like, I have had an experience. I'm going to tell my story of what probably I've had many, many examples of this in my life, but there's one where like it was a real turning point of like kind of like the illusion popped that anything was ever going to actually fill that void, that maybe the void was something else. And so that's really what I want to talk about towards the end of the video. But I also had a client who enrolled in the 12-week coaching container that I offer, thanks to one of these experiences of essentially her dream like coming true in like this magical way. Like if I told you her real story, which for privacy reasons I will not, but like if I told you her real story, like you wouldn't even believe that something like this was possible, and it is, and it happened to her. And in her words, I'm still not happy. This was supposed to be the thing that would make me happy, and I'm still not happy. And I see, and in my story, there's a very similar phenomenon. Like I see how I'm still not happy, and my mind is like, oh, that wasn't the thing because I'm still not happy. So this must be the thing. Okay, hurry up and like start chasing after this. Go get this thing because that's actually the thing that will make you happy. The mind just redirects onto the next external thing, the relationship, the outcome of whatever sort. It's like, okay, no, it was this. It wasn't that, I get it, but no, it's this. It's definitely this. When you get this thing, then you'll be happy. And it sets up this pattern of seeking, and the inner void is intact. It's just like aching, seeking. Like how to actually close that gap is the work that I'm about, is like where my heart and soul gets lit on fire, is like what even is that inner void. And I'm going to get into that as well in this video. And leave you with an offer for a complimentary thing at the end. So if you stick around, like awesome. If not, see you later, whatever. Leave me a like on the video if you find even one little nugget of something that's insightful, that like helps you see things a little bit more clearly. This just makes my heart happy when I can help illuminate any new perspective that is ready to come online for you. I'm overjoyed to be a part of that. So my story is kind of a trivial thing, kind of not, because it has to do with my career. And this was about 10 years ago. I was working at a software company, and I was working in like a technical capacity. I was kind of a translator between business people and technical developers, like understanding what the client needed in the software that we built, and like what kind of business purpose did they need this functionality, they need this report. What is the business purpose that this is ultimately trying to do? They need this specific number because they're going to take that number and put it into their payroll. They're going to take that number and use it in their gate system to decide if this person can get on site. Like, they have a specific reason for why they need this thing. So let me understand that reason, and then let me envision what kind of functionality in the system, and then take and translate that functionality into developer speak so that they actually know what to build. So that was my job. And so essentially it was a lot of projects. It was a lot of, this client wants us to build this tool, this client wants us to update this tool, whatever the case is. Retroactively, or like reverse engineer that into a set of requirements, and then work with the developers to build the thing. We would test the thing, fix this, here's a bug, all of that, and then when it's finally completely done, give it back to the client and train them on how to use it. So like, that was my job, like just project after project after project of updating this software. And so I did that for a few years, and I became aware of what's called a project management professional certificate. So it's like a certification in the project management industry. The PMP, project management professional certificate, is like the cream of the crop as far as the certifications that are the most reputable, credible, etc. So I got it in my head that I need one of these certifications. I need to be a certified PMP. Okay, and that was the surface level, and I'm breaking this down and encouraging you to kind of project your own desire into these different layers, because there's the surface level of like, on the surface, what do you want? And my surface level was like, I want my PMP. I want this certification. I could see it on my resume. I could see it, the things that I would learn, helping me to be better at my job, making me more promotable. So like, this is all on the surface of what I could see. What's going on under the surface is the real question. And like, now we're getting into that void territory. Like, what gap exists inside of you that you think this external thing is going to fill? And what it was like a deep lack of self-worth, like a deep void around like, am I truly good? Am I valuable? Am I useful? Do I have something to offer? I wasn't sure. I really wasn't sure. And I was using, at the time, I was using my job to prove to myself, using things like getting promoted, like getting positive feedback from clients or supervisors or coworkers, using those external things to try to stuff in the void and get it to stop aching. This ache of, am I worthy? Am I worth anything? Am I replaceable? Am I just a body in a chair? And if I didn't sit here, somebody else would come and do this, like maybe even better than me. Like, that's a hard thing to sit with, of like, am I really worth anything in this position, in this life? Am I just taking up space? Am I worth anything? So that was the void, and continues to be the void that I personally work on inside of myself and with my clients often. It's a self-worth question mark that we are ultimately trying to lighten. We're trying to balance with like a sense of inherent worthiness, meaning you're worthy because you exist, you're worthy because you breathe, you're worthy because you're alive. Like, that makes you worthy. There's really nothing to prove in the worthiness department, and yet our self-worth may or may not accept that. Our self-worth, internal self-worth, especially if we have a worthiness wound, meaning we had people early in our lives who were very results oriented, were very outcome oriented, meaning if you did not produce the result they wanted, you did not get love, period. Like, you got a B on your report card instead of an A, and you got in trouble for it. You got grounded. Like, you stayed out past the curfew and you got in trouble. Like, anything to where it was like essentially conditional love. Like you didn't get love if you didn't perform a certain way. This is like conditional love is very degrading to our inherent worthiness. And unconditional love is how we rebuild and get back in touch with the inherent worthiness of like, you're worthy of love. Because like worthy of what, right? Self-worth. Like, am I worthy? Like worthy of what? Like worthy of love and safety. Period. And like often safety is really just about love. Like, am I loved? Am I loved? Am I going to lose my love? Like, am I going to lose the external love that's been provided to me? So when we get down under the surface of what it is that you want, we're going to find that void. We're going to find that it has something to do with feeling insecure and a gap in your inner security that could relate to love. It could relate to safety. It could relate to worthiness. It could relate to all of these things, but it does come back to that inner void. And that inner void wants things. It inspires us to go after the thing. And so in my case, it was this project management professional, whatever. And before that, it had been different positions within the company, which I had like achieved. And it's like cool for a minute. You know, have you ever had that where like you get promoted at work and like it's awesome for a day? You wake up the next day and it's like already worn off, right? Like you get your first new paycheck with your raise on it and it's like, yeah, that paycheck's cool. And like by the next one, like you already forgot that like that even happened. Like you're back to just living with the void. And so this project management professional certificate, that was my next goal. And I was so focused on it. As far as like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm so excited about it. Like, this is going to be the thing that lets me like have a sense of like professionalism. And it's like some letters to put behind my name on my email signature. Like I was all about that. I thought that was going to be like really the thing that like got me the respect that was going to close this void. And so long story long, okay, I spent years wanting this thing, like fixated on this thing. Like every time they did like a quarterly performance review with me, the twice a year, the annual, like any performance review where I got to sit down with my supervisor and her supervisor, I would say like when they were like, okay, so what's going well? What do you want? Like what would keep you happy in your role? Like that sort of thing. I want this certification, meaning I want you to pay for it also. This is like $5,000 process, but like I want you to pay for the certification for me. And so I had turned that in on probably 10 different performance reviews and finally got the news that we're greenlighting this, you're gonna do it, find the class that you take, like schedule your exam, like do the things and like submit the expenses and like put it on your Amex and like we're gonna pay for it. And so I find the class. It's like a 5-day in-person, 8 hours a day, like go and sit in this class where it's like the bulk of the training. And so 40 hours of training, and then they recommend that you spend about 80 hours studying and then take the test within 4 weeks, like just to like keep your momentum going. So I did the class, I scheduled my exam for, like 2 weeks later, I'm gonna say, and I did like full time, like did this at a kind of a low point, a lull in my job role to where I could study like as my job. And I studied and studied and studied, and there's like all these different vocabulary words, there's all of these different formulas. And as it worked like in the exam, when you sit down to take the exam, they'll give you a blank sheet of paper and you can write down anything you want onto that sheet of paper. So you don't get to bring in like a cheat sheet of formulas for yourself other than in your brain. So like you're memorizing all of this information, and then you can like, the first thing you do when you sit down to take the test is like you write on your blank piece of paper, you can fill it up double-sided as much as you want that you can remember. And then you have that piece of paper as you sit there and take the test that's like, I forget exactly, I should look up. I want to say it was like 400 questions and you had 4 hours to take it, but that could be wrong. It was a lot, and I know the 4-hour part was correct, but the exact number of questions I forget. But like, you had your cheat sheet. So I had done so many practice exams. I had practiced writing out my cheat sheet like 100 times, like over and over, memorizing the formulas, rereading the book, rereading my training notes, on and on. Like, I had studied so hard and like poured my heart and soul into this study process, because the PMP was the thing that was going to fill the void, and I was going to feel so awesome and yada yada. And so on the day of the test, I took PTO. I took paid time off so that I could, like, my test was at 11 and was going to go and like take my test and then like celebrate afterwards. Like, I'm planning on passing it. And I finished my exam in about 3 hours. And this is the part of the story that like really like is where the nugget of gold is. So I finished my exam, and like, they had a functionality where like you could bookmark questions that you wanted to like re-review, or if you didn't know, like you could leave it blank and like bookmark it and like go back to those at the end. So I get all the way to the end, I go back, I like go back through my question mark questions. I fill those out as best I can, and everything is complete, no more bookmarks on the questions, and I'm sitting there with the submit button. Okay, and it's like a computerized test. So like, you're gonna find out like as soon as you submit it, like, did you pass? Did you not pass? Because if you didn't pass, it's not the end of the world. Like, you would just have to pay the testing fee, a couple $100 or whatever, to take it again and take it again. And like, if you didn't pass the first time, like, that's definitely a hit to your confidence as far as like, what am I even gonna do? Like, study harder, I guess, but like, what am I even gonna do to try to pass it the second time if I didn't pass it the first time? So anyways, I'm sitting there with the submit button. Okay, and this is the part that's like really burned in my brain, because I started like having heart palpitations of like, I'm this close to finding out if I'm a PMP or not, and like how much of my effort and heart and soul I've poured into this process. I've wanted this thing for years. And now here I am. Click one button and I'm gonna know my fate, okay? And so I finally work up the nerve to press the submit button. And it's like, thank you for taking your tests at our testing center. We request that you take this 10-question survey to tell us about your experience. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I want to know if I passed. I don't care about your survey. Well played putting it before the result, because if it was after the result, like, no way would I take your survey. But like, okay, you've got to take the survey to even get to the results page. And so at this point, I am like answering the survey like as fast as possible, because when I clicked submit, I'm ready to know. I'm ready to know right now. So I answered the questions as fast as possible. Next. And I land on this page. And it's like this giant white page. And like about this big in the middle of the page in green font, it says, congratulations, comma, you passed, exclamation point. And then under that, it like gives you your score, which, I mean, it's a passing score. It doesn't even matter what you got. And the moment felt empty. Like, it felt so hollow. And like, again, I feel like I'm sitting in that testing center, like that hollow feeling is like burned into my consciousness as a moment, as one of my greatest moments in this entire lifetime of like pure disillusionment, of like, it does not work how you thought. This thing, getting this PMP, was supposed to fill the void, And if anything, I felt emptier. The void felt bigger in this moment of like, congratulations, you passed. You're now a PMP. You achieved the thing. I felt worse than before. What the fuck? I felt worse than before. I was actually like really irritated. Like I went home that day expecting to be like high on life and like celebrate and treat myself to a celebration of some kind, like whatever I felt like doing, like let's go do the thing. I went home and I was like depressed. It was a Friday that I took the test. I was like depressed all weekend. I go to work on Monday and they're like, so did you pass? Because like I'm talking this thing up. Like I'm so excited that I'm doing it. And like everybody knows I'm taking my day off so I can go take my test. And like they're like, did you pass? And I'm like, yeah, I did. Yeah, I got it. And like I just like, it was the beginning of just another round in 15 years of chronic depression. And I just like could not, at the time, I mean, like I said this like 10 years ago, like at the time, like I could not understand. And I again was angry because this was supposed to fill the void. How do I feel worse? What the fuck is going on here? Like, I don't get it. Like, this was supposed to be the thing that gave me my sense of professional credibility, that gave me my sense of like, I belong here. I am good at what I do. Like, I should feel more confident because now I have this accreditation behind me. I didn't. I felt worse. And this is where the void is so tricky. Because again, it instantly wants to try to identify like, okay, so then what? So then what can I point myself at? What can I achieve? What can I get outside of myself in my hand that will fill this void? The mind immediately starts trying to pick out a new goal because obviously that wasn't the right goal. So let's just set a new goal. But I think it was like, how much I had pushed myself, which is also really classic Carly. Like, you know, they're like, yeah, like spend about, you know, study about 20 hours a week and take the test about 4 weeks after you take the class. And, you know, that'd be about 80 hours of study time on top of your 40 hours of training instruction. And of course, like I am studying, like it's my full-time job. Like from the time I wake up in the morning, this is also pre-self-care, by the way. So like by the time I wake up in the morning, every spare minute I have at work, come home, study for at least 4 to 6 hours in the evening time, like stay up late studying and then go to sleep and dream about project management equations and wake up in the morning and do it all again. And I did that for 14 straight days. And so, I mean, like I was also like exhausted. Like, I think that helps with disillusionment is if you're too tired to set a new goddamn goal, that's actually really beneficial. So yeah, it was very, very disillusioning that any external achievement, and up to that point, I mean, I was your classic overachiever, just next goal, next goal, next goal, next goal, next goal. And none of them ever really made me feel better, but I also had never been so unable to, okay, so just redirect to the next goal. Like that level of exhaustion that was with me was, like I said, really useful for this breaking open of disillusionment, of like letting go of the idea, letting go of the belief system that any external achievement is actually going to fill this void. So we've talked just a little bit about like, what is the actual void? And in my understanding, and I would also love to hear in the comments if you have a different understanding, but I think it's just generally our sense of self. Like, you know, self-worth, self-love, self-like, self-understanding, like all of these things, but sense of self. Like that void that's inside of you and me. And like I said, I think this is relatable to the human condition. The inner void is where self should be. And the external achievement is projecting self outside of self. right? Like self is over here chasing after the thing rather than being deeply embodied inside of the body. Self is actually not in there. Self is over here with this goal, and self is over here with this relationship, and self is over here with this external metric system of whatever sort. Self is not inside of self. That is the void. And so bringing self home to live in the body. And that's where, you know, that sense of self is really the deepest layer. But when we start getting into like self-worth, for example, if your self-worth is lacking like mine was, like if you're sitting there with a gargantuan worthiness wound of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not helpful, I'm not useful, I don't even deserve to be here, I have to achieve this thing before I'll deserve love, before I can like really let myself relax and actually enjoy my life, I have to achieve X, Y, and Z. Like all of this is a worthiness wound talking, in my own opinion. You're welcome to disagree or see it differently, and I'd actually love to hear down below because, like I said, my own void is a work in progress. So when you have that kind of a wound, when you have that kind of a gap in your self-worth, bringing self home to self is actually really difficult because self is pursuing those things because self doesn't feel safe to stop pursuing those things, right? Like self is committed. Self is believing that that thing coming true, that dream, that goal, that achievement, whatever it is, that thing coming true is actually what's going to let me finally feel safe and okay in my skin. And so when you say, well, like, stop chasing that thing and just get in your body, talk about easier said than done. You know, so like, this is the part where there are many different angles to come at this with, as far as all of the various work that I do in my workshops and with my clients and in my master classes and in my community space, and like anytime I can work with people one-on-one or in a group setting, there are all of these different ways to essentially bring self home to self. And that, I think, one of the main tools is to signal to your body that you are actually safe, to begin deepening into your own belief system as far as like, how worthy do you believe you are? Your self-concept, your sense of self, like how worthy and safe and lovable do you believe you are? And to dismantle any limiting beliefs that are guiding you to this behavior of chasing that worthiness, lovability, etc. outside of yourself. Because again, until those beliefs are dismantled, you will not let go of that external chase in order to just come inside of self and rest. Rest in that place where the void is. That void is where self should be. And so if the inner void is something that you live with, and that's something that you've tried to fill with achievements and goals and dreams and manifesting external things, and it just is never enough to fill the void, or if anything, you actually feel worse after you manifest the thing, then I would actually invite you to schedule a complimentary activation session with me where we can work one-on-one in one free session to see if there is any kind of spark of clarity that we could generate together. If we can get you insight and clarity on exactly how self could come home to self one little bit more. Remember, this is a journey. Like, I do this for a living and I'm still coming home to myself. Like, this is a work in progress, always. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. But I would love to sit with you on a session and see see if we can find that spark of clarity for one more pathway, for one more piece of yourself to come home, right? Like, this is what lights me up on a soul level. This is what I want my life to be, is helping to heal that void. Because that void, sometimes called the hungry ghost, that just wants and wants and wants and wants and is a bottomless pit of never enough. Like, healing that void is so important to me because I see so much of the suffering on the planet originating in that void. It comes from that place. And so I can't heal all the suffering on the planet for all the people, but if we can, as individuals, bring self home to self such that our own personal void gets a little bit smaller, and then bring self home to self such that our own personal void gets a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller, and a little bit smaller. This is us eradicating darkness from the planet. This is us giving birth to activating more life within our own body, right? Like, allowing even more of our soul to come online, allowing even more love to fill us up. This is the work that I'm about, both inside of myself and with the people that are intrigued enough to book one of these sessions, come into my community space, book a 12-week container to take a journey with me to really bring self home to self so that you can be still living all of the things that you dream of living. It's not about not having goals or not setting intentions of like, I want to do this thing. I've always dreamed of doing this thing. It's about the way we walk towards the thing and the hopes we hang on the thing, as opposed to how much we enjoy the process of getting to birth whatever it is that we're creating. No external achievement will ever feel like enough. It's about presence in the moment, having self full of self right now, right? The moment that you see, like, congratulations, you passed. The moment you get handed your new promotion, the moment you get handed the keys to your new house or your new car, that's one blip of a moment in time, and it's never enough. And the hungry ghost will always point to the next thing, and the next thing won't be enough either. And whenever you're ready for that cycle to be over, I invite you to book that complimentary activation session. I would love to see you there. The link to do so is in the description box. Until next time, I do hope you are taking exceptional care of yourself, and so will I.